the behavior you've exhibited that lets you be successful so far is not going to take you where you're trying to go.
All right, you industrial pros out there, that is Mr. Ed Eppley, and he is passionate not only about your success, but also the disciplines that will let owners and executives and managers who run industrial operations not only survive, but thrive in this time of profound change. I'm excited about the interview. You stay tuned because it's going to be a great time.
Welcome to the Industrial Talk Podcast with Scott McKenzie. Scott is a passionate industry professional dedicated to transferring cutting-edge, industry-focused innovations and trends while highlighting the men and women who keep the world moving. So put on your hard hat, grab your work boots, and let's go.
Yes, let's go. And welcome to the Industrial Talk Podcast. My name is Scott McKenzie. This is where industrial professionals come to talk. So glad that you are here. We are 100% dedicated to your success. So thank you very much for joining the Industrial Talk Podcast. We interview Ed Eppley, and he's the founder of the Eppley Group, and he drops value bombs in this particular interview. So thank you very much for joining. It's a great interview, so hang tight. Great weather out there. Very unique, very special. For Louisiana, I might add. And we're on the other side of Mardi Gras. So FYI, if you have a bucket list, you put Mardi Gras out on there, okay? And you make it a priority in one of your trips, come out to Mardi Gras because you will not be disappointed. It's a lot of fun. The memory will last a lifetime. So that is my plug for Mardi Gras. Make it happen. But before we get to the interview, let's take care of some business.
Tailgate Talk number 1.
You know I'm passionate about reliability. You know I'm passionate about those wonderful people at reliabilityweb.com. And if you have any interest whatsoever in the reliability market space, whatever it might be, you need to your first move out in the web is to go to reliabilityweb.com. Connect with those individuals because they will not let you down. They are passionate about the content and they are cutting edge when it comes to reliability, asset management, maintenance, and they want to help you succeed. That is reliabilityweb.com. You need to go on out there because they are wonderful.
Number 2.
Okay, at industrialtalk.com, we are once again passionate about your education and providing the content that will make you the best industrial professional possible. So we've got 2 locations out there. One, the Industrial Academy, and that is located at industrialtalk.com. One of the menus, Industrial Academy, and those are courses that are specific to you, the industrial professional, and they are taught by the best of the best. So you want to improve in your industrial profession? Go to the Industrial Academy and look around because we've got the courses out there and we've got the pros teaching them. And then the second place I want you to go is Industrial Dojo. That is a collection of, I guess, smaller podcasts that are focused on industrial marketing, industrial sales, industrial branding, and you could go there and just rifle through and become and expand your market. That's the Industrial Dojo. That's the purpose of that location because I'm going to tell you, man, it's spectacular. So anyway, those are the 2 locations. So let's get on to the interview here. Once again, this is Mr. Ed Eppley, and what an honor for Industrial Talk to have him on as a person who's, I mean, my gosh, he's dropping value bombs like nobody's business. And what he does is, and he's passionate about this. He's passionate, and he communicates that passion in the interview, is helping executive teams and leaders adjust and advance in how they behave so their teams and companies can be more successful and with less collateral damage. We work in a very dynamic market. Things are changing, retaining employees, creating that culture that attracts that great talent. Ed has answers. Ed just goes boom, 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 and he's just knocking them down. So once again, if you're struggling, if you're having a challenging time within your organization, this is the podcast for you. I'm just telling you straight up because he drops these bombs. Oh, grab a paper and pencil because you're going to want to take it down or re-listen to it. It doesn't really matter. So once again, here's Ed. He's going to be dropping a bunch of value bombs. Thank you very much for joining the Industrial Talk Podcast. enjoy the interview. All right, welcome Ed Eppley. He is the founder of the Eppley Group, and I'm so glad that he has made time in his schedule to be able to be a part of the Industrial Talk podcast. Ed, how you doing?
Very well, Scott. Good
All
to
the
be
way
with
from
you.
Dublin. Is it cold up there?
It cooled down. It was up in the 60s yesterday, but we're down to freezing today.
See, here in Louisiana, we just, well, it's not the best. Well, today is pretty nice. It's dry, and it's been dry a couple of days, but beforehand, it's just like, oh gosh, it's just sloppy and sloshy, hot here in February. Well, thank you very much. I know you're a busy guy. We've been chit-chatting there for a little while now, but tell me, and tell the listeners of Industrial Talk Podcast where you come from, what's your background, a little 411 into Ed and the Eppley Group.
I'm an entrepreneur at heart, Scott. I didn't know it. I think most entrepreneurs don't know they're entrepreneurs until much after the fact.
I'm going to debate you on that one. I believe in your heart of hearts, you knew in your heart that you're saying, I want to do more. I want to give more.
Yeah.
And the structure of, and I push back on that just because I'm the same way. It's like you've got this restlessness within your soul, and you're like, oh, well, God put it there for some reason.
Yeah, but you don't think of yourself as a quote entrepreneur. You're just not satisfied with the norm, and so you have to act on it. And it's not a choice. You have to act on it.
No, and I was teaching at Holy Cross College, and it was business, and I sat there and I had that same conversation there, Ed. I just said, okay, if you have this sort of feeling inside of you and you don't act upon that feeling, and then all of a sudden you find you're at the end of your life, you're going to be tormented forever. How's that? That's pretty.
Regret is the worst of emotions I've heard.
It's awful.
And it is for entrepreneurs.
Oh.
In fact, I think you've teed up something, so I just have to run with it.
Yeah.
Most people, the normal people, in quotes, see risk only in doing something.
Right.
Entrepreneurs see risk in not doing something.
You know, that's a really good point. And that is a spot on point, because I know that for me, I'm constantly restless. And it's like the fact that I need to be doing something. You're absolutely spot on. Very good. I like that. I'm going to steal it, put it on a bumper, and I'm going to just run with it, and it's going to be all mine.
The rest of my background is because of having started and operated a number of different businesses. I've made just about every mistake that you can make as a manager and a leader of people. I frankly burned out in being a manager because I was doing it the wrong way. I was just throwing effort at it and not disciplines or methodology that lets you do it effectively and efficiently. So being very curious, I had to learn more about why I didn't like it and why what I was doing wasn't working. So I became somewhat of a, I wouldn't say a savant, but I became very invested in trying to learn everything I could about professional management and leadership. And then I got a chance to start working with a variety of different individuals. And so I've had a number of at-bats at this over 40 years, both from doing it myself and watching and being with others who are doing it, most of whom do it better than I ever did. So,
well, nobody sports a hairdo like yours. We go to the same bar. In fact, I remember going into that same barber, and then we go to, no, that barber's the bathroom, and it just sort of disappears.
Dollar Shave Club, baby.
Yay. Back at you. So anyway, one of the things that is very interesting to me, and what I think is real important for the listeners of Industrial Talk, is, once again, in the industrial world, we sit there and I can segregate the various components of industry, but one of the areas that have been discussed and debated and expanded upon and written about, and you name it, it's out there, and it's always leadership, and it's always managing individuals and managing those individuals in a way that they, quote, excel and produce, or whatever you might want to use. How do you, Ed, fit within those confines or in those parameters? What differentiates you outside of the fact that you've got 40 years and you got a beautiful haircut? How do you find yourself in that sort of world?
Well, I think what I've learned from my clients is that they value three things that I do for them. One, I help them take what appears to be very complex situations or circumstances and get it down to something really simple, so that it gets to the essence of, if you don't deal with this, or if you don't do these two things, it doesn't matter if you do all the other stuff. So I help them see a path, which is I don't know that you learn to do this as much as I've been blessed to be able to see it. I see patterns very quickly. I see themes very quickly that oftentimes you can't see if you don't have a third party looking at it with you. I think the other thing I do often help the leaders, the CEOs, the owners that I deal with recognize the risk of not acting. So often they are being constrained by fear of, if they do certain things, there's going to be a negative consequence, and what do I do about it? And then I help them weigh that against, but if you don't do something, there's also a risk. And yes. and they start to have to come to grips that sometimes, and in fact, I would argue in most cases, doing nothing is usually not going to make things better.
It's not going to build a legacy, by the way. It's not. No. And if you're in the business of being able to, once again, grow your business and excel and build out that market, you're going to have to make challenging decisions. You're going to have to fail. You're going to have to get back up, brush off your scuffed up knees, and then proceed forward.
Well, you're talking about the demonstration of courage, and courage is the ability to act despite fear. And most of us, when we think about the people we want to be led by and to work for, we want somebody who has some courage. We're inspired by people who are not afraid to make that tough decision and recognize it's not beautiful, it's not perfect. There is going to be problems associated, or there are problems associated with this decision. So knowing that we have somebody that's not going to be paralyzed by that is powerful. It inspires people, and if somebody wants to know how to inspire high levels of loyalty, you just need to be courageous in an intentional way. The last thing I do, I think the last thing I do is I understand very quickly what somebody's talent is. So when I'm working with a CEO or a president or an owner, we'll talk about their executive team. I get exposed to them, and truthfully, I probably size that person up in 3 to 5 minutes, and I make decisions about it. And I'm not always correct, but 80% of the time I am. And so what I can do with the clients that I work with is help them. I validate instincts or feelings that these people have about their talent. And so I help them very quickly decide, do I have the right people on my team?
And for your listeners out there, let's, once again, you've got to take that pen, get that pad. Let's write down these 3 points. 1, we talk about taking the complex and making it simple.
Yep.
And once again, and it gets to the point where, okay, it could be a huge elephant, but just take that one bite at a time. So let's take that complex, make it simple. And that's also a factor of going forward, which is important. We don't want to just be stagnant. And then we take the leaders to be a true leader, a courageous leader. You've got to just make those difficult decisions and understand the risk. But once again, helping the leaders be able to make those decisions that could be perceived as risky. And then finally, really understanding the talent, being able to evaluate those that individual or group of individuals' talent and validate that. Because that's real important. If correct me if I'm wrong, if you don't do that, then you don't know your gaps. You don't know how you sort of that fit into this sort of the organizational stuff.
Yeah. The very best leaders that I'm around, Scott, are incredibly self-aware. They know their strengths and weaknesses. They know if they're assholes, and they acknowledge it, and then they mitigate it somehow. Sometimes they have somebody that comes around them and after them and cleans up the collateral damage that they make. In other cases, they recognize they need to circle back and do it themselves. But one way or the other, they recognize that. And
that would be a leader being self-aware.
Absolutely.
Like you said that, I was intense.
Yeah, you are. You're absolutely intense. but you know you're intense.
Oh yeah.
You're not blind to it. There's a lot of people who are as intense as you are, and they think they're normal, or they think that when they get done interacting with somebody that they don't have to say, "Are we okay?"
No, you're absolutely spot on, and I love it. I love what you're talking about. I love the fact that you're talking about courage and how that is important within the leadership and thinking. You know, everybody throws that word leadership out, and what does that mean? Are you born, or do you learn, or what? I mean, what does that mean? And I think I love the hitting the nail on the head with that courage. You got to be courageous. You just got to be courageous out there. Make the
Well, and in you know, if you think about the risk associated with action, the the vast majority of the people with whom I work wait too long to do what needs to be done. They'll do it, but they wait too long to do
procrastination, and
it. Yeah. They come up with excuses not to act.
Is that a factor of being afraid of making a bad decision? What is it?
Well, I think it depends whether you're in a large company or a small company. I think, and let's just say if you're over 1,000 people, I think the primary fear, it's not of making a bad decision, it's being viewed as wrong. You know, I made a wrong decision. So it's the scrutiny of people looking at what you did and then declaring it as an incorrect decision. When in fact, as you know, Scott, because of your background, a lot of times the choices are not between a right and a wrong decision. It's one decision and its consequences versus another. And it's not one's right and one's wrong. It's their different outcomes if we do A versus B. And so rather than not making rather than making a decision and explaining that there was not a right decision, there was just a choice, you know, one sucked less than the other. It's oftentimes what it is.
You're absolutely spot on.
All right. So rather than getting on with that and dealing with it, what I do is I delay that. And it may not be by years, but it could be by months. It could be from, instead of doing it in first quarter when I knew I should have done it, it's third quarter.
Right.
And the cost of that in terms of frustration, and people know what the right decisions are, even if they don't like them, they ultimately will go, well, yeah, if I were in your shoes, I'd have done the same thing. So yeah.
How does somebody, I mean, I'll be candid in the sense that many C-level organizational individuals are too busy dealing with firefights or distracted or whatever the reality is. Rarely do they think that, oh man, I need to get somebody in here to talk a little bit about my culture. How does that sort of evolve and go? It's like, how do I know to talk to Ed about the fact that because I am so prideful about my organization. I think it's the best thing since sliced bread, and then I got to call an Ed, making it sound like I don't.
There's a couple of common scenarios. Number one, there's a truth teller around the formal leader who whispers in their ear or confronts them, you know, right in their face, but just simply says, "Look, this isn't working. We are screwed up, and whether you like it or not, we're screwed up." So if we could ignore that and continue to churn, you know, Robert Fritz wrote a book called The Managerial Moment of Truth, Scott, and in it he talks about most companies oscillate instead of advance. And oscillation is like sitting in a rocking chair on the front porch. You're moving, but you ain't going anywhere. And so what you do is you oscillate back and forth one year to the next because of not making the tough decisions that you should.
I like that.
Or making the wrong decisions. But in most cases, it's the avoidance of the real issue. Whereas what you want to do is you advance, and that's where you put some kind of energy behind that rocking chair that moves you forward. Huh. And so you put an engine behind it. Now it pushes you forward. So that's our job, is to help you do that with your clients. I try to do that with my clients. Is we try to help them advance, not oscillate. And so the truth teller is the one that's telling us we're oscillating. The second, I'm sorry, I interrupted.
No, you didn't. No, you're spot on, because I want to go to the second, but I like that a lot. I've never had that analogy spoken to me, and I don't know even if the word is a word, but are you an oscillator? It's a verb. Oh, yeah, sounds like a verb.
I could be an oscillator. Do I unknowingly fall into the oscillator category?
Sort of fall. Okay,
Well,
go to number 2. I appreciate that.
If my wife was on here, she would say I definitely oscillate about certain things around the house. There's no question.
You're an oscillator.
Yeah, I am definitely an oscillator about certain projects around this house. I guarantee it.
Yeah.
The second scenario is the leader, formal leader, watches, understands what's going on, and recognizes something's not right. And sometimes it's, formal analysis. It's, employee net promoter scores. It's organizational health assessments. But at other times they can just feel that it's not right. One of the things Patrick Lencioni talks about is politics. And the definition that we use of politics is anytime people choose their words before speaking.
Uh-huh.
And so when we're sitting around the table and we're having a debate about whether we should spend this money or we want to take on this strategic initiative, and if people are hesitating before they speak, or if they say something like, well, I'm not sure if I should say this, but, or if they, even more so, they say, I'll get with you after the meeting. They don't want to say it in front of others.
Yeah, that's true.
Those are signs of being political.
It's never happened to me. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So it's not politics in the sense of trying to position so you win. No, it's the whole idea that we're not having the honest, truthful conversations that we really need to have as quickly as possible.
Okay, Ed, we're going to have to take a break right now. Thank you very much, new listeners out there. We're talking truth. 1, complex to simple. We want leaders to take more risks. Let's have some courageous leaders out there. Understand the talent. Got to understand that talent. And do you have a truth teller, or can you sort of sense things that are going on in your organization? Those are all facts that you need to be listening to. Coming back after the break, we're going to be talking with Ed a little bit about what's keeping that CEO up at night. So hang tight. Do not stop listening to this podcast. We will be right back. Thank you very much for joining the Industrial Talk Podcast.
You're listening to the Industrial Talk Podcast Network.
All right, the Industrial Talk Podcast has a new sponsor by the name of ASG Energy. Now, this company helps private companies as well as public organizations of all sizes reduce energy costs through the use of commercial LED lighting technology and electrical services. Now, you know me. I'm a big fan of LED just because, well, first off, I don't have to change the lights, but on a commercial basis, oh my gosh, the energy savings is phenomenal. The reduction in maintenance costs, phenomenal. Return on investment, quick, it's incredible. And the environmental benefits, self-explanatory. So, you have any questions about LED commercial lighting? You need to check out my friends at ASG Energy, LLC.com. Find out more because they know what they're doing. So check them out. All right, welcome back to the Industrial Talk Podcast. You know, we're talking to Ed Eppley, and he is the founder of the Eppley Group, and we're talking some really good stuff right here. In the last segment, we've got some point by point, which you should be taking notes. If you're a listener of Industrial Talk Podcast, you better be taking notes. Okay, good. Anyway, now we're going to be talking a little bit about, okay, Ed, we talked, I want to be a CEO. I'm going to stick my CEO hat on my bald head, and we're going to talk a little bit about what keeps me awake at night. In your experience with other CEOs, what do they sort of share with you and say, Ed, this is causing a lot of problems? Talk to us about that.
Universally, number one, it's the acquisition and retention of talent. Everybody is fighting in this war for talent. And in any industry, there's 30% of the people that are out there that you really want. It's my number, it's nobody else's, but I think there's probably, if we got a universe of 100 people we could hire, there's 30 of them that we all want, that are the above average folks. Maybe.
What about that Pareto principle, 80-20 type deal?
I
think
close.
It's 20.
It may be. You're right. I'm probably being overly generous. I don't want people to be dispirited or give up in their battle for that because there's so few of those out there. But it's
real,
not very many.
Yeah, but we're going to talk about solutions of how you can probably increase that.
Yes.
Continue.
Yeah.
I agree with you on that talent issue. Yep.
Yeah, and it's not going to go away. It's not going to get remarkably better. Even when we have the next downturn, it's going to make things a little better for a little while. But still, it's not going to be something we don't have to worry about the next 5 years. The competitive advantage right now, everybody's striving for one, and ultimately, when you can find one that's sustainable, now all of a sudden you have something that really puts you in a position where you can take more risks of an appropriate kind. You can invest for the long term, and we can talk about where you get that. But everybody, I would tell you this: the vast majority of businesses that are small businesses don't even think about a competitive advantage. All they're trying to do is survive.
Yeah, that I agree with you on that. It's definitely a cash flow survival lifestyle.
Yeah. It's not that strategic. But as you get to a size, probably $25-30 million, all of a sudden you start to recognize this is a business. And now to put ourselves so that we have some kind of runway that's indefinite, we've got to be able to do something better, or that the market does not have too many sources to get done. And so what are we going to do to try to make that happen? And then the last one is just this whole new reality that whatever business I'm in, that it's not enough to run this good business, Scott. I've got to be aware that there are going to be people who are going to have an interest in what I do that don't care about my business. So there are going to be people that the people who live in the community where my business exists care now what's going on inside my walls. That it's not enough to pay my taxes and hire people. I've got to somehow demonstrate that I'm going to contribute to the well-being of the places where I do business or that affect my stakeholders. And again, most entrepreneurs didn't go into business to have to deal with that.
No, and in fact, in the industrial world, it sort of evolves like this. I need to get a ditch dug. Hey, Tom, come on over here with your shovel and dig a ditch. And then all of a sudden, Tom does a good job at digging that ditch. And then the other company saying, hey, I saw Tom dig that ditch, and I'm going to have them dig this ditch. And it sort of evolved. There it is. Now I have a company, and I dig ditches, and I dig ditches well. I don't really concern myself with the 3 points that you pointed out. One, retaining talent. I'm just a ditch digger. I'm just trying to make cash flow and then two, my competitive advantage. And then three, once again, how do I fit into this whole community and that social aspect of no, I didn't think about that. I was digging ditches, and it evolved into a bigger ditch digging company.
Yeah. I got a company I'm on the board for right now. And the owner is absolutely struggling with doing and spending any time thinking about anything other than the core parts of his business. And so anytime he has to think about HR issues or about the political ramifications of what his business is about, he just runs from it, hates it. It says, I didn't go into business to have to deal with that. And yet the reality is, well, I'm sorry. It's great that you didn't want to do that, but right now, if you don't pay attention to it, you could go out of business.
Yeah, absolutely. But there are solutions out there.
Oh, absolutely.
That can minimize the frustration and the pain and the anxiety associated with these things that you don't want to deal with. However, what we talk about here, how to retain talent and how to sustain that competitive advantage and dealing with that whole social political benefits associated with what we're talking about. I mean, those are very strategic, and it's not, come on, you got to retain it. My company, I have challenges with hiring people, and then they cause yes, I want to hire great talent. What do I need to do? What strategic tactics and strategies can I deploy to deal with those three components?
Number one, on the acquisition of talent today, there has to be something that your business is striving for beyond making money. And it needs to be really well articulated. in fact, if the company is a going concern, let's say it's $100 million company, Scott, you know, a typical manufacturing plant, it's been around for 40 years. It may not be that big, but let's say it's $50 to $100 million. They've already had a purpose. The problem is they've never articulated it. So it's what the owners or the leaders of that organization have to do is really spend the time and energy to understand that there is a purpose that the business has. They've got to put their arms around it and put some words that represent there's this thing beyond making money that is why we're here. And they have to start playing with it. It's version 1.0, then version 2.0. It might take them 5 years to really narrow it down to something meaningful. But as you know, you're a big believer in purpose. But when you figure it out, all of a sudden you get leverage that you could never get with just a mission statement or just a vision statement.
And I guarantee you, when my good friend Jim Witt talking about purpose, I guarantee you, if you go around that organization and say, "Hey, what is our mission statement?" And I guarantee you probably 99.9999% of the people will not know.
Right.
And then when they look at it, are they inspired? And I guarantee you 99.99999 are not.
Correct.
Shareholder value doesn't just like, yes, shareholder value. No, doesn't work that way.
No. I as I say, people don't give their hearts to EBITDA.
I'm going to steal that one too. Just
you may. Yeah. People are not going to give their hearts to operating profit.
We got bumper stickers, and you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
nobody. Not one.
So number one in the acquisition and retention of talent, especially if they're under the age of 40, they are looking for this. I've made some observations. They're simply observations, but the reason purpose has matters today because it hasn't like it hasn't in the past is we used to get purpose in our personal lives through the communities of which we were part, the neighbors that we really had instead of people who lived next to us. We had neighbors, the fish fries and the social activities and the churches where we worshiped. We were connected to people. And so much of our purpose was being met away from work. So we didn't need it from our work. In today's world where everything's, digital and we live next to people, but we really don't know them and we don't really care about them. And we're not connected in the way that we were in the 70s, 80s, 90s. That purpose is not being met. People aren't going to church like they used to. And right, whether you agree with that or not is not the issue. The point is that purpose is not being fulfilled in our personal lives. So if I can get it from where I work, that's really attractive to me. And in fact, I'll work for less money if you're purpose driven in a way that I want to be oriented than going somewhere else and get more money.
I like that a lot. That makes sense to me. And you're absolutely right. I've never heard that either. So yeah. Bumper stickers and your teaching.
On the competitive advantage, it's down to choices and being ruthlessly objective. Most of us have these rose-colored glasses that fog our vision about who we are as individuals, but more importantly, what our company is able to do and not do, and what the market wants and doesn't want. We talked about the ditch digger example.
Yep.
The ditch digger started because there was a need, and he or she dug the ditch, and somebody says, "I want you to do all my ditches," and all of a sudden they have this business. But the whole idea of doing something better or different than somebody else was not part of it. The market allowed that business to start.
Yep.
But if I don't watch the market and understand what people now need from ditch diggers, and I keep trying to sell what I originally offered when I got into business, as the market shifts and I start to fall out of step with the market.
And I'll give you an example with that ditch digger component. I dug it with a shovel.
Yes.
Now I need to buy and invest in a backhoe because my competition is using a backhoe. And if you're not,
they can charge less, or they can do it quicker because they have that than the way I used to do it.
That's exactly right.
So the whole idea here is recognizing where the market is and where it's going, and then how are we prepared to deal with that? And most of us want to keep selling what we have been making. If you think about it, we don't want to have to change to go where the market's going because it costs money or it's uncomfortable or it's not why we got into business. And that's a real struggle for a lot of businesses to think that far in advance. They're just trying to survive.
That's exactly right. But once again, I use an analogy in one of my programs, and that is the hamburger versus the sliders. Sliders are delicious, and I can consume a lot of sliders. And my objective is to consume sliders. If I look at the hamburger, it's a big deal. What you're selling, these individuals, these companies, consume the slider. Make incremental advances. That's all we're talking about.
In most
because
cases.
If you look at that thing, it's like, it's so huge. Just consume a delicious slider.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Well, and again, the whole idea that you need to fail fast, you need to try and then abandon. The other part is Peter Drucker's. I'm a huge Peter Drucker fan, and one of his. Some people
he can rub people the wrong way here and there. Yeah,
and he's not the most entertaining author to read, but the message there is the whole idea about being able to routinely abandon stuff that has gotten you to where you are is so hard for the average company to do.
I'm just stunned by that.
Well, they have if it's your own private company and it got you to this point and it's it's your baby, it's hard to kill the baby.
It's true. Yeah, but I don't know. I don't know. I look at it this way. I just want to put the right people in place, get the job done, and have fun
You're more pragmatic than most entrepreneurs.
It's true.
You are. You're very pragmatic. So I don't think for you it doesn't look that hard. For some of these folks, it's part of who they are.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't mean to minimize the challenge of that by any stretch of it. And then the last one is that how do you fit within that community, that social element? Because I like that.
Well, first of all, I think you need to start with a strategy. Before you embark on this, I do think you need to ask yourself, how do we want to be known in the community in which we operate? What do we want our reputation to be?
Yeah.
What do we want? And that should be linked to your purpose.
It
right?
has to be. You can't have a disconnect there.
Right. It shouldn't. And some people are into checking boxes, and so they really don't make the connection that they should. Right. But if you're doing this right, then our purpose should really be a blueprint for where we're headed and what we're trying to be as an organization. And that should, and then say, so how would that look to the city council? How do I want, if there's an article about us in the paper, what do we want people to have to consider and know about us and think about us as they read that story, right? I shouldn't say in the newspaper, online. But
what? Newspaper?
Right. Yeah. So I think you gotta have some people around you in your organization that can help you craft that. Because a lot of us, to do that in a vacuum by ourselves, it's probably not going to come across right. So have the strategy, and then once you have the strategy, you can figure out tactically. So now, how do we go about doing this? Who from our organization needs to be involved in what charities and in what activities? And do we even, when there's a tax levy coming up, are we going to go public with our opinion about it?
Good. I like it. We're going to have to take a break, my friend. Thank you very much. Okay, listeners out there, we're talking about the acquisition and retention. We're talking about that purpose, that they got to be striving beyond more than just making money. We've got that competitive advantage, and we're looking at that new reality of combining that sort of that well-being of that organization and how that organization fits within there and the strategies associated with it. That's what Ed talked about. That's okay. So we're going to wrap it up in the next segment. That's where you're going to get information about Ed. So thank you very much for joining the Industrial Talk podcast. We will be right back. Hey, once again, this is Scott McKenzie with Industrial Talk. If you like what you're listening to, please feel free to sign up for the free podcast as well as the blogs. I'll try to keep it all relevant to your business and hopefully be able to provide some insight into what we do at Industrial Talk and what you do as a professional. Hope to see you soon. Thank you. All right, welcome back to the Industrial Talk Podcast. Of course, we're talking with Mr. Ed Eppley of the Eppley Group, founder of this organization. And I got to tell you, Ed, man, I'm really enjoying this conversation in a big way. The time has passed really fast. You're dropping some truth bombs. I've got a ton of notes. If you're looking at me in the video out there, you can tell that I'm just sort of looking at the notes, making sure that I've covered everything for you, the listener. And let's see, I think we're good because we need to wrap this bad boy up, and we need to know how people, the listeners, and anybody, because this is going to continue to be posted out there, gets a hold of you and grabs a hold of your wisdom. How do they get a hold of you, my friend?
Well, the easiest way is to go to my website, theepleygroup.com, all one word, EPPLEY. Yep. And that's the easiest way to reach me. When they're there, I think a couple of options. Number one, I have an assessment that lets them understand what their current state is of their ability to operate with the 6 disciplines of professional management that I learned about through Aileron, which is a wonderful place that people need to know about. If they want more about professional management, this is a great place to go and learn it.
Love the name.
Yeah, it was started by Clay Mattill, who was the owner of Imes Pet Foods. Oh, no, if you're familiar with Imes,
yeah,
and he has a love affair with entrepreneurs, and he dedicated this campus to helping them be more successful. So, professional management, you can take your assessment on the website. Also, I mentioned earlier today the purpose. And the power of why purpose is so important today versus in the past. And I've got a PowerPoint there that people can download about why purpose matters and the ways that they can connect with purpose if they haven't. And then the last thing is I have a link to my Amazon where you can buy my book on Let's Be Clear, the 6 disciplines of focused management pros. And so if people want to really dive into it, it's not a long book. It's about 120 pages, but it's stuff I've learned to be true.
I love the airplane book, man. I'm a big advocate of airplane books, man.
It's about the 2-hour plane flight. You're going to have most of it consumed.
I love it. Love it. All right, listeners out there, we're talking about going to the EppleyGroup.com. That's theepleygroup.com, all one word. You can take the assessment out there. That's on your homepage, right? That's on your homepage right there. I can also buy your book on your homepage there. It's right there, clearly identified, all good. And it looks like that's a one-stop shop to get a hold of Ed. So you listeners out there need to go. I like your website. It's very clean, very nice, and easily navigatable. Is that another word?
Yeah.
So there's a navigable. Navigable is. Anyway, you were wonderful, my friend. Dublin, Ohio. It's a little cold out there, but it's okay. It's all good.
We're going to do this again.
Any last parting shots for our listeners, my man?
Yes. Be aware that there is risk in not making a decision.
Kaboom. Absolutely. I'm telling you right now, that is true. Hey, everybody out there, this is Ed. He's Ed Eppley. He is the founder of the Ed Eppley Group. You need to connect with this gentleman because he knows what he's talking about. He's changed my life. He hasn't changed my hairstyle, but he has changed my life. Ed, thank you very much for joining and talking to our listeners out there. And you, listeners, you got to hang tight because I'm going to reiterate these contacts on the other side of the break. So thank you very much. Thank you for joining the Industrial Talk Podcast. And thank you, Ed, for joining too as well.
You're listening to the Industrial Talk Podcast Network.
All right, I just want to extend once again a thank you to Ed Eppley, founder of the Eppley Group. He was dropping some great value bombs on how you and your organization can benefit from him. He's an amazing book of wisdom, I guess you could say. And I'm just so honored to be able to have him a part of the Industrial Talk Podcast and share his wisdom with you, the listener. Thank you very much. And once again, you need to get a hold of me. If you can't get a hold of me, you're not going out to industrialtalk.com because that's where I'm at. And I am constantly looking for and wanting feedback into that platform because, once again, we are 100% dedicated to your success. We want to improve our industrial marketing, and we want to improve our industrial sales, and we want to improve, definitely, our industrial branding. And that's what this platform is for. It's for you to do that. So thank you very much once again for joining the Industrial Talk podcast. We will be back next week with another great interview, and I think it's a gentleman by the name of Jamie Young, and I'm excited about it. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful day. Be safe as always, and we will talk later.